Hello super friends and welcome to DC TV Talk, and in today's episode we are going to be ranking all of the major main annual Arrowverse crossovers, including the most recent Elseworlds crossover, so let's discuss. So, something a little bit different in this video. I thought for this really special ranking video, I thought I would do this face to face. I don't do this often on this channel. I prefer to use, more promo photos, trailer footage and things like that. But I thought for this video, why not switch it up, do something a little bit different. So this is my face. If you haven't seen me, hello, I'm Declan. So with all that being said, I thought I would set up a little set here. Here's some of my Funko collection. I have a pretty large selection of Arrowverse Funkos, but I thought I'd choose these ones. These are pretty appropriate for the Elseworlds crossover. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to be ranking all 5 major annual Arrowverse crossovers. So I'm going to be starting with the Brave and the Bold, which was, Arrow Season 3. Then I'm going to Heroes Unite. Then it's going to be, obviously, Invasion, Crisis on Earth X, and then Elseworlds. So they're all the ones that are in the running, and so it's the top 5 Arrowverse crossovers. So with all that said, let's jump into it with number 5. So number 5 is going to be Heroes Unite. Now this is also known as Heroes Join Forces. There are a couple of names for it. It's the Arrow Season 4 Flash Season 2 crossover. This is the one that set up Legends of Tomorrow. This is the one that birthed Legends of Tomorrow as a show. We got the introduction of both Hawkman and Hawkgirl, and we also got the introduction of Vandal Savage, who of course was the main antagonist of Legends of Tomorrow Season 1. So this crossover was a bit of an interesting one. It was landing during Flash's arguably strongest season in Season 2, and with Arrow's weakest season in the form of Season 4. So with that, it was a bit of a shaky one. It had to deal with all of the terrible stuff that was going on at Arrow at the time, but all of the great stuff that was going on the Flash at the time. So it was a bit of a mishmash in terms of quality. You kind of had all the awesome stuff going on with the Flash, dealing stuff with Firestorm. We had the introduction of Jax Jefferson, but then we had all the stuff on Arrow with all the horrific Olicity drama going on at the time, including the introduction of the plot point of Oliver's son William actually coming into the storyline and actually coming into the present day. And this was something that really caused this storyline to actually become really fractured across this entire crossover. And this crossover overall had a weird stent around it, given the fact that we had all of this Olicity stuff going on, and it just didn't work, and it didn't actually meld well with the rest of the tone going on throughout the crossover. And with that being said, I feel like this crossover is really a bit of a downer when you include all that stuff. Especially we have Felicity in this crossover, who was probably the worst she's ever been in the entire, history of the show in this crossover, which was really, really horrible to watch. Although we do see her die, technically, which does kind of count, but, all that being said, I feel like this crossover just comes across as a bit of a weak one overall. Even though we do get some really cool Legends of Tomorrow setups, that's all this crossover really is. It's a setup. And while the same can be said for Elseworlds, I will get to that later on. That is one of my biggest complaints with Elseworlds, is that it is basically just a setup. I will get to that later. But this crossover is purely a setup for Legends of Tomorrow, and if you didn't actually eventually go on to watch Legends of Tomorrow, like a lot of people didn't, this crossover is kind of pointless. In at number 4, we have Brave and the Bold. Brave and the Bold was the first proper crossover the Arrowverse ever did, which was really, really exciting at the time. We were getting an on-screen, live-action interpretation of a crossover between Green Arrow and The Flash. This was an exciting time for all of us Arrowverse fans, and it was really awesome to see these two characters actually in costume on screen together. So we had the first episode with Flash versus Arrow, which was really awesome because it was one of those things that us comic nerds love to see, which is our heroes actually fight each other. So we actually got to see Green Arrow fight the Flash, and this was really awesome. I love seeing this, getting to see, Barry come over to, or we actually get to see Team Arrow go over to Central City and see how Barry gets affected by this metahuman, which turns him basically into a mega rage character, and he has to go and fight Oliver. And what I like is that Oliver is obviously extremely competent, Oliver knows what he's doing, and he's not afraid to take down Barry, and I thought that was really fun. And obviously we do get the training sequence as well, where we get that incredible scene of Oliver shooting Barry in the back, which has obviously now been called back in Elseworlds and got much reference throughout the rest of the Arrowverse crossovers. It was really awesome to see that scene originally, because it was one of those scenes that just really embraced the awesome chemistry between Stephen Amell and Grant Gustin. This was the first crossover that really sort of embraced that and really showed that, yes, these two actors are really good together and have really good fun together, not only on set, but is reflecting on screen. And I think Brave and the Bold did that really well. And then for the second part of the crossover, we had Team Flash come over to Star City, and we got to see them try and take down Captain Boomerang. And this was really cool. We got the introduction to Captain Boomerang, who was a really awesome character in this show. I really liked this interpretation of him, and I liked how they brought him back in the season 5 finale of Arrow. That was really cool too. And we got to see how he set up all these bombs throughout Star City, and the Flash had to go around and take them all out, and that was really cool while Green Arrow fought him. Just a really awesome crossover. We also got to see the Flash meet up with Arsenal, which was really nice. They got a few cool moments, Barry and Roy, they got some nice moments together. And overall, I think Brave and the Bold, for the first ever proper crossover, it was a really good start and really began to set the foundations for what we would see going forward. In at number 3, I'm going for the most recent, I'm going for Elseworlds. Elseworlds was a really hyped up crossover. This one had so much hype going into it. Everybody was so excited about it, just purely based on the set photos alone and the concept of Oliver and Barry swapping bodies. This was a huge thing that really got a lot of us fans incredibly excited, including myself. If you were watching my videos on the run up to Elseworlds, you'll know I was hyped AF for this crossover. So with that being said, when this crossover came out, I was a little underwhelmed, I won't lie. And that could be because maybe I set myself up for it too high, who knows. But personally, I found it a little bit disappointing. I still really enjoyed it, but it's a little bit difficult to kind of, get that much enjoyment out of it when, similar to Heroes Unite, this crossover was essentially a setup. This is a setup for next year's crossover, which is, of course, Crisis on Infinite Earths. And with that being said, I feel like this crossover just kind of comes across as a bit pointless in the end. It's kind of like something that needed to happen in order to get to Crisis, which maybe could have happened anyway, so it was kind of just there. I mean, we do get introduction to the Monitor, who I think LaMonica Garrett as the Monitor was absolutely awesome. I loved him. But then on the contrary, we did get Ruby Rose as Batwoman, who I really didn't like. Nothing against the character of Batwoman. I love Batwoman as a character. I just don't like Ruby Rose as an actress, and I didn't think she did a good job in the crossover whatsoever. And all that being said, we did get some other stuff in this crossover too. Like, we did get the introduction of the 90s Flash, played by John Wesley Shipp, and he was completely wasted in this crossover, as was Cassandra Gina Mel as Nora Freeze, completely wasted also. So this crossover is a bit of a mixed bag. While it is incredibly enjoyable and there are some great moments, it's also a very funny crossover. That first episode on The Flash was really fun, and seeing Barry and Oliver swapping powers was really cool. Seeing Stephen Amell actually get to do comedy for once, which is something he never gets to do, was really awesome to watch on screen. And seeing Grant Gustin having to be really dark and brooding was again something interesting and fun for us fans to kind of chew on. We also got Superman quite a bit in this crossover, and I love Tyler Hoechlin's version of Superman. I think he's a fantastic Clark Kent and great Superman, and I loved seeing him. The black suit Superman was really cool. He was really awesome. And also the introduction of Elizabeth Tulloch as Lois Lane. I think she was incredible in this crossover. I loved her interpretation of Lois Lane. I really want to see a Superman and Lois show now because they were really good together. So I think this crossover has a lot good with it. I think there is a lot of good material here. But by the end of it, you kind of feel a bit underwhelmed because you realise that this was all just a lead up to Crisis on Infinite Earths, which we'll get next fall. In at number 2, we have Invasion. Invasion was the biggest crossover at the time. Invasion was huge, because Invasion was not only the crossover of The Flash, Arrow, and Legends of Tomorrow, but this was also the crossover that finally brought Supergirl into the fold, and we finally get to see Supergirl interact with other characters from the Arrowverse, because she had only previously interacted with Barry in their little mini crossover. So we did get to see all of that, and having Supergirl in this crossover was really fun. We got to see her, Oliver was a bit standoffish with her. He wasn't a big fan. He didn't really like the idea of this alien who he didn't really know anything about kind of just being around. He didn't really like that. Obviously, Oliver being out of control is not something he enjoys. But this does have some really awesome stuff, like bringing in the Dominators, who have been referenced many times since, and they were a really cool villain, actually. I really enjoyed their presence, and also getting to see some really awesome action sequences. The Legends being properly involved in this crossover for the first time was really awesome. We got to see how they were able to play off of each other and play off with the other heroes. Like, we obviously got to see Nate Hayward come in. We also got to see Heatwave come in, and this was really awesome, on top of characters like Sarah and Ray, who we had already previously seen. And what made this crossover really hit home for a lot of people was seeing how this was actually connected to the Flashpoint storyline. All of this happened due to Flashpoint, which was going on in Season 3 at the time, and we got to see how conflict was developing between not only Barry and Cisco, which we already had seen in The Flash Season 3, but also between Barry and Diggle, due to everything that was happening with his son, who was, well, a daughter who was now a son. And we got to see how that conflict was actually developing a little bit, and everyone didn't trust Barry, and I thought that was really an interesting development. Granted, there was a weird development with the 2056 Barry message, which completely went nowhere, but other than that, I think this crossover was really cool, and the best part about this entire crossover was the Arrow part of it, as it was also the 100th episode of Arrow. Obviously, Arrow being my personal favourite TV show of all time, it was really beautiful, that episode, getting to see all these characters come back. It was a true throwback to Season 1. We got to see James Sheridan come back as Robert Queen. We got to see Susanna Thompson as Moira Queen. We got to see John Barrowman. It was just really awesome to have all of these characters back on the show for, you know, a reasonable amount of time, and it was really awesome to get that and just have a real throwback to Arrow. Obviously, a lot of Flash fans have experienced this year as well. We had the Flash 100th episode only, you know, a couple of weeks ago, but this was it for Arrow, and it was just such a nice moment and really was like the icing on the cake for this crossover. And I think Invasion, you know, it was the biggest one they did. It was a big risk, but it massively paid off. And number one has to go to Crisis on Earth X. Crisis on Earth X is practically perfect in my opinion. I think Crisis is incredible. It's just so big and bombastic. We have all 4 shows fully involved, even with Supergirl. It's not just Supergirl. We do have Alex involved, we have Winn involved, kind of, we have James involved, kind of, and we do get to see other characters as well. We have all the legends come in, even new legends at this point. You know, Zari was involved. This was really a massive crossover, and it was awesome to see, you know, and like I say, there was so many characters in this, which was insane. When you see that final end shot where they're all fighting alongside each other, was insane. And not only that, we had all that going on, but we also had all the stuff on the Wave Rider going on. We had Cisco and Harry on the Wave Rider and the girls on the Wave Rider, which was insane too. We also got a little storyline with Iris and Felicity, which was really fun. We got to see, obviously, the whole premise of the crossover was based on Barry and Iris's wedding and how that developed. This obviously led to the marriage of Oliver and Felicity as well, even though I don't agree with that because it was a complete gate crash and Iris and Barry should be furious with them. It was still a pretty cool way to end it, and even though Diggle was kind of wasted, he did get a great scene, and I did really enjoy all of that. The action in this was incredible on all fronts. Every single episode had at least one brilliant action sequence, at least one, and it was just excellent to see all of that going down. On top of that, the villains of this crossover were top notch. We got to see evil versions of Oliver, Kara, Tommy Merlin as Earth X Prometheus, which was just a complete fanboy moment, and getting to see Eobard Thawne return as the Reverse Flash was something that us Flash fans have wanted to see for a long time. But like I say, out of all of those, particularly seeing Tommy Merlin back as the Earth X Prometheus was something that was really cool, because Prometheus in Season 5, who of course was the main villain of Arrow at the time, we were all speculating that Tommy Merlin was actually going to be under the mask. Of course, it turned out to be Adrian Chase, but it was really nice for the writers to actually acknowledge that and stick Tommy Merlin under the mask of the Earth X Prometheus. And while the villains were all awesome, we also lost a major character in this crossover in the form of Martin Stein from Legends of Tomorrow. He died in this crossover, and is one of the most emotionally impactful moments of the Arrowverse. It never fails to make me cry every single time I watch it. I think it's so emotional that we lose Martin Stein in this crossover. We also get to travel to Earth X, a forgotten Earth within the multiverse due to the fact that the Nazis won the Second World War. We get the introduction of Russell Tovey as the Ray, who was an excellent addition, and we also get to see Leonard Snart, Earth X doppelganger, in the form of Citizen Cold, who was also great and continued on in Legends of Tomorrow for a little bit. And all of these things, all of these elements coming together made this crossover feel so special. This is the biggest one they've done, and I still believe this is the best crossover the Arrowverse has produced thus far. So that was my ranking of all 5 major Arrowverse crossovers. What is your ranking? Make sure you let me know all your thoughts and your own personal ranking in the comments down below. Do you agree with my list? How do you feel about Elseworlds? And do you think Elseworlds should have been higher on this list? Obviously, Elseworlds is still pretty recent. Maybe over time it could go up, it could go down, who knows? But I feel like at this point I'm pretty stuck on my list. So it's going to go Heroes Unite, Brave and the Bold, Elseworlds, Invasion, Crisis on Earth X. And where Crisis on Infinite Earths will fall on that, I guess we'll have to wait and see. I'll probably do another video like this next year, and we'll see where that goes. But with all that said, guys, I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like. It'll help me out a lot. And share this video with anyone and everyone you know who loves DC TV and get them to join the community. And as always, guys, please subscribe for all of your latest content on Supergirl, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, and Arrow. And with all that said, guys, hope to see you guys again in my next video.